So you want to know how to identify chords. So let's start with C because it's easy to see the notes. You know your scales. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Well, you know major and minor. You know, major is basically you start with the minor, with the major interval, then a minor interval above that, major, minor, major, minor. Basically alternates. And that's the way you build that chord. And this is basically fully expanded. Now, how you determine, like, you know how that's a 7. Because you go 1, 3, 5, 7. If you kept counting along the number scale, or basically scale degrees, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So.
Oh, 1 second. When you went 11, 12.
Yeah, you can keep counting beyond the 8.
You know what I'm saying? Went up into that, what is it, F sharp?
Yeah. Because 1, 3, 5, 7, 9. Remember, major, minor, major, minor, major, minor, major. Once you go past that that octave, it's basically like a G scale.
Okay.
So if we were in the key of F, then it would be basically like a C scale. That relative fifth scale. Once we pass the octave, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. That makes sense?
Yeah.
So if I built the chord 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 11, 13, 15. Going back to that C, 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 11, 13, 15.
No, if I ask the question, why you skip those two and going it the second time around?
Because we're doing major, minor.
Okay.
Major interval, minor interval, major interval, minor interval, major interval, minor interval. Like this is the fully expanded C chord. All the way to the 13. So remember I said the scale basically changes after the C to a G major. You can actually operate in that scale in C, and right, because that G scale is basically relative. In the same way, and this is how you get some of your substitutions. Like let's say in this chord right here, you can build a lot of other chords, right? Like say we took the C away and took away these. That's a E minor. So if I did that's an E minor scale, pentatonic. See what I'm saying? So when I'm playing that C, I could play that E, I could play this G, I could play this B minor, D major, or F sharp diminished. The further away you get from this root, the more complex it sounds. So starting with that E, then the G.
So you can run all those runs and still sitting on the C.
Exactly. So going to the B next. C, E, G, the B minor. Going to the D next. I know you heard this before.
Outside.
it's got that off sound because it's so far away from. At this point, we're going past that octave, so things start to sound even more outside. That's just the diminished. Then back to the root. Now, to identify these chords, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. That's your major 13. Now, if I move anything around, then it changes the chord. Like, then you basically have an altered chord because you changed it to something outside of the scale degrees. So, let's say I raise the 5. Right? Now it's a C major 13 with a raised 5.
So C major.
Or sharp 5, however you want to say it. You still recognize it for the scale that it's in. Basically, you're looking at the scale degrees. If I saw this chord and somebody said, "What is that?" I'll try to spell it out, or I'll count it out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I see that this is raised because it's out of scale. So we got to raise 5, 7, 9, 11, 13. Everything else is the same. So that's the way that works.
C major 13, flat 5.
Let's say we had the same thing and we did this. It's very odd sounding, but if you had to call it out, what would you call this?
One is. So here I know it would have gave me a minor if it would have been E flat minor right there.
Well, you still want to start from the root. It's still
okay.
A C something, so...
C major. Help me out, dog.
It's a C major 13th, but it's sharp in the 9. The 9 is sharp. So let's try something a little more tricky. What if I did this? But that's my root. C is my root. What is that?
Lord. Help me, Lord.
Well, basically, it's an inversion. I know that C is my root, and I see that, that it's an inversion. So here's my 1, here's my 3, flat 5, 7.
Okay, flat 5 and 7.
And altered chords are more advanced stuff, but, if you can...
So that was a C major flat 5, 7?
Yeah, if I played it in this root inversion, it would be that, which is easier to see. That's your major 7.
Flat 5.
That's your major 7, flat 5. Which has a nice sound to it. Anyway, so major. Well, let's just start with root inversions. There's 2 other types of alterations that I want to tell you about. You know what that's called?
Suspending.
Yeah, that's a sus chord. We're sussing to the 4, so it's a sus 4. If we went the other way, that'd be a sus 2.
Okay, so sus 2, and that's a sus 4.
Sus 4.
Okay.
This is often just called the sus chord. So if you see sus, chances are it's the 4th, but there's also a sus 2. Back to major, of course, if you flat it, it just went down, you just have a minor chord. So that's a movement. If you move that up, what's that?
Sharp 5.
That's actually an augmented chord because it's majors.
So it'd be a C augment.
Yeah, C augmented, E augmented, A flat augmented. So that's how those work. And building chords is always the same, meaning that you skip degrees to build it. So this is your augmented scale: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Every other note is what gives you that augmented chord. This is really your 1, 3, and the 5. It's basically how we build chords, or the foundation of how. Even when you start putting those together, like say I did this, well, you would say, well, you didn't skip a chord there. Well, technically I did. 1, 3, 5, 7, 9. I just brought that down. In the same way, you could actually bring, you remember this whole chord? You could, in essence, bring this down. And that would give you, I know that's hard to see, it'll basically give you this, where I'm playing what's pretty much a G scale. And that's another way to think about chords in terms of building chords, is that if I'm playing in C, I can play all the notes, or if I'm playing in C major or playing a C major, I can play all the notes of G major. Because if I took these 3 up here, or these 4 up here, that's a G major scale. Right? Mm-hmm. You see that? So if I did that, I could basically do whatever I wanted to, in theory, as long as it falls in that shape.
And then you can go anywhere, or say you did that, and you played a G major something. You can go anywhere else in the C major scale on the bass end.
Well, right now I'm talking about the chord. Like basically, when you start to think about expanding your chords and things like that, you're hitting these different scale degrees. In essence, you're in a different key every time you hit a chord, and that's why it's good to know all 12 of your keys, because this is major. I know everything that I can do in the major scale. I go to the 2. Now I'm in the minor. And basically I'm playing as like a major, but this is, its actual scale degree is a minor. Right? And then major. Now remember, when I hit a major, I can play the relative 5th, all the notes in that, which in this case would be a C scale, which is all your white keys. Right? So that's your 2 majors. If we were to go into minors, it works pretty much the same way, except I can play the relative 5th, all the notes, in that scale. And this is why. If I build the minor chord, minor interval, major interval, minor interval, major interval, minor interval, major interval, until you get back to the D again. So 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 11, 13. If I brought this down, you see, that's all right. If I bring that down, you see that this is basically all the white keys, or a C major scale, which is also what?
C major scale is also that.
A minor scale.
Okay.
Your relative minor?
No minor scales.
Yeah, you do.
Well, I probably do, but I just don't know. I know.
You know your major scales?
I know major scales.
Okay. What's your favorite key?
Ooh, I say E flat.
Or just something you play in a lot? We want all our keys to be our favorite key, but So you playing? You said
E
E flat.
C sharp.
Okay. So this is your E major scale, right?
Minor.
Well, what you have for every major scale is a relative minor. Relative minor starts on the sixth.
That's right. I did know that.
That scale still works. What I do different is I actually started on the sixth. This has to do with
That's the
modes.
C minor scale too, right?
Yeah, C minor scale, because the sixth degree of your E flat major scale is C. That's that same scale, right? So that's basically the way that works. So if I'm in, let's say I wanted to learn a B flat minor scale. That's my chord. What's the relative? Like this would be the sixth. The sixth of what?
6 of E flat.
No. C is the sixth of E flat.
So you asked me what's this? The sixth
This is
of?
the sixth of what scale?
Ooh.
To figure that out, what's the difference between the six and the tonic or an eight? 6 and the 8. What's that interval?
I don't know that.
It would be a minor interval. When we were in E flat, if we did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 6 to the 8, that's a minor interval, right?
So would it be? No, it won't be G then.
So you go a minor interval up to get back to your tonic from your 6. Or basically to get to a relative major.
So it'd be C sharp then?
So when I did B flat,
It's C sharp.
exactly, because that's our minor. So whenever you hit a key and you say I want to play the minor, you should be thinking about the major of the major scale, but a minor interval up. So another way to think about this too, going back to chords, minor interval, major interval, minor interval, major, minor, major, minor, right? So if we're considering that, if we took this triad and just moved to the next triad, that's a major scale. We're basically gonna start there to build that scale based on that. That makes sense to you?
Yeah.
I mean, it's so many different ways to think about it. You find what works for you. That works for me, where I think, okay, that third interval and play the major scale. But of course, instead of just playing that scale, you're going to start on the 6 and play that scale.
But it still be. So another thing, when you playing, just to get off real quick, if I'm playing in B minor, it'd basically be playing in C sharp. Just I'll start on the 1 on the B minor.
Basically.
Okay.
Like if you're playing We Worship You in the Spirit. We are in the key of B flat minor. Even though you could think of it as those same chords are what we were playing. But That's why they're relative. All the chords in that key work in the same key. You know, if we went back to E flat, we were doing that C minor. Now this minor scale is the melodic minor, but it's different types of minor scales. And I'm at a loss for the names of them right now, but that's another one. And they all have a, slightly different sound. What you hear in gospel a lot is the blues scale, which is kind of different from both of those. And I think the best way to learn the blues scale is to learn the pentatonic scale. Do you know the pentatonic?
Ooh.
It has 5 notes.
I think I know it in E flat. I don't think I know it in C. Cause if I got a song, I just learned that.
You say you know it in E flat?
I think is it like somewhere in between. I can't remember.
So let's say we're doing Every Praise in E flat, which has been played to death, but every praise to our God. That's your pentatonic scale, basically. They just roll that too, but it's a 5-note scale, and that's why it's called the pentatonic, like a pentagon, or so those are your notes in your pentatonic. Right? When you play the blues scale, you're basically playing a pentatonic, but you're going to add this flat 5. Mm-hmm. That's the only difference. Instead of going, we're going to go. I had to change the way I was playing it a little bit. Instead of, we're going to bring this in. You follow me?
Yeah.
So all that's still minor. Now, when do you do which one? It really depends on how you're flowing. Because if you're basically flowing in that melodic minor scale, then you're basically playing in C. I mean, I'm sorry, not C, E flat. You're basically playing the E flat. But it just has a different sound to it when you start doing. This is like, you start going into this, especially in church anyway, with high church. And I'm saying, think of it like that because, like, resolving there, you can play these notes in whatever you want, order you want to, on that note. But this scale is associated more so with high church. Can you use it at other times if you're doing it? You can use it. But I prefer, using that melodic minor. Or even the pentatonics. But I mean, the main thing is that you have options.
That's what I'm trying.
You could do any of those depending on what you wanted to add to a song. And in the same way, when you know that blues scale, you can apply that in your major. And you see how that has a different sound than if I did that.
So when you just flowing like that, really you just playing, or is it a formula that you came up with? I mean, like, say you just flowing like Pastor was just talking, you just did in C minor. Is that something that you already kind of played around with and made, or is just you just?
I'm like, what you want to basically do is you want to get to the point where, like, how do I explain this? When I play a C minor, for that moment in time while I'm playing a C minor, it's certain shapes that's kind of illuminated for me, if you will. So, like, this is the shape. If I want to move around in that C minor. And that shape, if we went back to the true minor scale, this is the shape. And this is the shape because that's your 5 minor scale. Remember I told you when you play a C minor, you can play that whole G minor scale.
What's the G minor scale?
The G minor scale is basically the B flat major scale. But I want to start on the 6 and end at the 6. You see what I'm saying? So when I get here, all of these notes, and when I say it lights up, or like, I know basically I can play any note in here and it's gonna fit. I'm not talking about out of scale stuff. I'm talking about if it's a whole band playing and we're on a C minor, I can play anything inside of here and it's gonna fit. So if I know that, then all of a sudden I'm kind of opened up. Not only do I know that, if I want to think about it a different way, I could play in E major scale. I could play of course, the G minor. I could play the B flat major scale. I could play the if I want to start getting outside now, I could play that D minor scale. Remember, we passed the octave, so it's gonna start sounding a little different. So if I started using that D minor, then let's see what that sounds like. Yeah, that's kind of off, but it still fits. As a matter of fact, it even still fits over the minor. It's just expanded. So that's kind of how I think. And I think the difference as you start to understand music more, whereas you used to think of songs in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and okay, scale degrees. When you start thinking about expansions, it starts to take you further than that, because now I'm thinking 1, but I'm thinking 1 major. And I'm thinking, when I see this, I'm thinking all the notes that go above that. When I see this, I'm thinking of all the notes that go above that. So if I'm here on the 2, I can do all those notes. A 3. And all of these are passing tones. And passing tones are another thing. I could probably go over that at a different time. But if you understand which chord you're on and how to manipulate that chord and do different things with it, then you basically get to a place where you know where you're going. You hear a lot of guys who can play, but if something changes or if something happens outside of what they expected to go, they get lost and they don't know how to find it. You know what I'm saying? And you don't want to be that guy. So you want to take the time to know your chords. You want to know what scales go with the chords. And while it can seem like a big task at first, it's really repeating itself. You got major, you got minor, you got dominant, and you got diminished. And each of those chords has a scale that goes with it. Major, and of course you build it by every other degree in the scale is how you build your chord. Minor, and every other degree builds your chord. You've got diminished. Every other degree builds your chord. This one doesn't have anything after the octave because it repeats. Right? And that's your diminished scale. And because basically your diminished is half whole, half whole. Half whole or half step, whole step, half step, whole step, half whole, half whole. Right? This is how you build your chord. It's